Welcome back to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by who? GrokTALK.com and Grok Media, LLC. My guest this week is Cindy Young, the J6 grandma who was arrested 2.5 years after January 6, 2021, and who was pardoned the day before she was supposed to report for prison after her show trial. She has a new book out titled UNBOWED, Saved by a Cowboy, a Rabbi, and a Carpenter. We're going to talk about the book, and she may even share some things nobody else has ever heard in the media before about what happened at J6 and the whole judicial process that followed. Grok Talk starts in less than 60 seconds. Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GrokTALK.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you. Okay, Grok Talk is back, and our guest is Cindy Young, who you may or may not have heard of. I am affiliated with Granite State Live, and she was one of our earliest guests way back in the spring. And it was because that was like, some good news happened. There was a pardon, and everybody was pretty excited about that. I'm sure you were.
I'm very excited about that, for
Excited
sure.
about that.
One day before I was supposed to go to jail.
One day. So that's really awesome news, especially when you've gotten your affairs in order and you're all ready to head off to the pokey.
Exactly.
And the big guy in the White House says, nope, you're all set. So that's really great news. We were glad to hear about that. That's why they had you on Granite State Live. And we have you here today because last month you published a book.
Yes, I did. I've told the story as it happened. I've brought people through I wrote one book prior to that called Out of the Fog, which was my story in my early childhood. And then this happened, so I continued the story. And, I've brought everybody through the whole journey of J6.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the book is Unbowed, Saved by a Cowboy, a Rabbi, and a Carpenter. And of course, Cindy said she has experience. She's written a book before. It's been published. This is her latest, and we hope that you will go out and buy it and read it, because we're only going to talk about it a little bit. And you can go online and you can look at all the interviews she's done, and they're numerous, and learn a lot of things, but you should just buy the book. It's easier, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, the book gives you a little bit more. It's different when you're reading a book in your hand versus watching an interview, because
That's
you're
true.
getting the behind emotion of what's going on.
Yeah. So
think.
we talk a lot about, and Granite Rock's been around for 20 years. We talk about the processes to punishment. And I think that's pretty much what your book is about. Yes.
Absolutely. The process was the punishment, because for me, I didn't, thank by the grace of God, end up behind bars, but I was a prison in my own home for 4 years, being monitored, going through the whole process of the court system. And that is taxing in itself, because everything that they do during the process is brought to the very last minute. So you're waiting, you're anticipating and hoping, and then boom, you get hit with something else, So yeah, it was a trying time in life for sure.
Well, I know a lot of people, and we've seen plenty of examples since President Trump was elected in 2016 and everything that followed from that, including J6, of how the justice system and all the political actors involved in it just use lawfare to crush you, often financially, but they don't even really, nobody really talks about how, like you just said, this is your life now. You are in this system, and they are ringing you, and you have to go to sleep every night. You have to get up every day. It's got to be exhausting.
It was exhausting, and I didn't even realize the full impact. Even writing the book was bringing myself through it once again, feeling all those emotions once again. And even now today, as a J6er, along with 1,600 others of us, we're still waiting for that vindication, that accountability for what happened, because this was a government setup. And, we all got caught up in it, and we all were destroyed in many different ways, but we have that common thread amongst us that we were all there for the reason to stand for free and fair elections and truth. And to this day, the people that orchestrated that event have not been held accountable.
That's true. Are there so one of my notes, and I know there's tons of talk about this, especially on the center right, new media, everywhere else. And maybe it's in the book, maybe you want to surprise people with it, but are like one or two or three things that, despite all the discussion that we've had, that nobody really knows about what happened with J6 and everything that followed?
Oh, I'll tell you a few things.
Ooh, great.
So it is in the book. And it was a surprise to me, the theater in that courtroom. And one of the things that was just unnerving to me was that I found out post-trial that one of the jurors, who was actually the lead foreman on my jury, his name is Jeremy Brinster. You can look him up on Wikipedia or WikiLeaks. He worked for the DNC under Hillary Clinton. He was a paid person that did strategies. He was on the nightly Trump nightly news feed that showed positioning against Trump. He wrote a brief against Trump, yet he served on my jury. And when he was asked, do you have any strong feelings against Donald Trump or his supporters, he didn't answer the question. And the reason he didn't answer the question is because he's a lawyer. He knows how to play the game. And I believe he was planted on my jury for a reason. I had jurors that were had already previously served on juries for J6, admittedly, that were allowed to maintain and stay on my jury.
I've
Repeat
actually,
jurors.
I have a limited experience with juries. I've been living in New Hampshire for 35 years, pretty much in the same county, at a couple different addresses. And I just got called up for jury duty. I think it was like 2 years ago, first time ever, right? And I went, yeah, I'm just like the whole process and everything. It's very It's very involved. I mean, there's a couple hundred people there, and they're just looking for 12 people, right, out of that whole pool. And so
Yeah.
I mean, DC,
Yep.
this trial was in DC, yes? There's millions of people to choose from. How do you get the same jurors on multiple J6 juries when there's so many people in the pool? It's just crazy. So that's part of the punishment in the process, the financial part, the mental torture, and then they rig it.
Yeah, they rig it. And, that jury pool, we did 1.5 days of jury selection. So anybody that answered yes to anything on the questions, and there was like 30 of them, if they answered yes, they were brought up in front of the judge in the stand and asked further questions.
Mhm.
And to find out these people, I mean, some of them got up there and they said that Trump was a felon and that, I wouldn't be comfortable going to their get togethers, which were for gay Black women. I mean, I heard it all. I saw it all. And I was just appalled at what I saw because it was true theater, and there was no way I was gonna win, but we knew that going in, and we also knew that it was important to get on the record the truth about January 6th, which I believe we did in a very good way. It's in the book.
Yeah, I tried to preview some of the interviews you did, some very detailed ones that were pretty long, and covered a lot of stuff. You can find it all out there. Again, get the book, right? Unbowed. Saved by a cowboy, a rabbi, and a carpenter. So who are the cowboy, the rabbi, and the carpenter?
The cowboy is Kevin Hoyt, who I met early on. I met right after I was arraigned, and he's a podcaster out of Vermont. And he got a hold of me and he was like, Cindy, we just need to cover this every step of the way. And that's what we did. And he really helped me to stay strong through it. In the beginning, it was rough because you would see me doing the interviews and I would break down because I'm 60 at the time, I was 68. I was looking at losing everything, my home, my family, everything. And to feel that weight of the government boot on your neck, unless you're there, I can't even describe the feeling of it. But so Kevin held me through all the way. He was like promising me that, you will come home to a home. Even if you go to jail, I'll be with you. I'll stick with you. And he did. He was an amazing friend through all of this. Um,
Cool.
as far as the rabbi, that's my attorney, Jonathan Gross. And the story how I met him was amazing because I went to an event in Rumney, New Hampshire. And it was right after the point where I had these two public defenders, which were useless. They just wanted me to sign a plea deal and go to jail. That was what they were defending me for. And I met Marjorie Taylor Greene at the event. And they had just withdrawn from my case because I wasn't playing the way they wanted me to play with them for the plea deal. And Marjorie looked at me and she said, I hope you have a good attorney because you're going to need one. And I said, well, truth be told, my attorneys just withdrew from my case. So she said, give your name and information to my staffer, whose name was Nick. So I did. And I never thought I'd hear anything from it because, little Podunk, New Hampshire girl and big Washington, D.C. fishbowl, I
Yeah,
didn't think I'd hear a
I
thing.
can't tell you how many
And
times I've given my name to somebody's staffer and never heard a thing. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So 2 days after that, I get this call from a man, Jonathan Gross, in Baltimore, Maryland, and he says, I'm calling you at the request of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And then the next thing he says is, FBI, if you're on the line, get the hell off. And I was like, I like this guy. And, he represented me for very little money as compared to many J6ers
Mhm.
because getting represented for this whole J6 fiasco costs people thousands,
Oh,
hundreds
yeah.
of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, even a halfway decent lawyer is 400 or $500 an hour. So
Yes.
I can imagine that you've got guys who are making $2,000 an hour, 1,200 to
Yeah.
$2,000 an hour. And by the way, as we've been doing podcasts and things for years, and sometimes I like to just say hello to the NSA because I know they're listening. It's just kind of a thing we do.
Hi, Judge Harvey. He admitted he watches my podcasts.
Does he? That's awesome. Hey, all right, cool. And of course, the Carpenter.
The Carpenter is David Sumrall,
Hmm.
stophate.com. And if you're not familiar with David's work, he did the J6 True Timeline, Bloody Hill documentaries. He really pulled together the truth and what exactly took place on January 6th, and it's worth giving it the watch.
Yep, I think people, it's one of those things that's kind of like COVID. That you have to get some distance before they feel like they can talk about it. And
Right.
obviously, there's a few people who've apologized for COVID, and there's a few people who said, and now of course we've got all this stuff coming out of Trump's FDA and DHS and all these other good things, and it just they have to feel like it's okay to say, yeah, it happened. They don't have to apologize because they know they didn't do
Yeah.
anything wrong, even though they
Isn't it
did.
funny the way that goes, though?
Yep.
Isn't it?
And this
I
is
mean,
kind of the same thing. I mean, we may literally have to wait almost JFK assassination numbers of years before people come out and actually say, okay, yeah, this really happened.
I know, I know. And it's so sad because, even as a J6er, I feel like if I talk about the things that still haven't taken place, I'm looked at as being ungrateful for my pardon, which isn't true at all. It's just that we need more closure to this. We need the truth to come out. We need people to be held accountable. We need to be restitution for what we've been through because lives have been destroyed. People can't get jobs. I'm in a fortunate situation where I'm retired. If I needed to get a job, the first thing they're gonna look at is the internet, and I won't get that job, guaranteed.
Yeah, I have a similar problem. I mean, I have the division of the company that I worked for. They kind of just sort of outsourced it a couple years ago. Kind of when I started doing this more often, more full time, kind of taking control of Granite Rock, literally. And
Right,
I'm only 62, but I'm looking at, I still do some work for them part time and then I do this. And I'm like, geez, if I had to go out and get a job, there's like Granite Rock's been around for 20 years. I've been writing there since 2010. I said, Anybody who wanted to go look me up, there's so much stuff about what I do." And I'm like, you know, some people wouldn't care, but how am I gonna
yeah,
get a job at 62 if I need one? I really gotta make this work. It just has to
right,
happen. I
right.
can't really retire for a couple more years, so, that is fortunate for you, and yeah, a lot of people, younger people, especially the really young guys and girls who were there, who
They're
were
all in their
making.
30s,
Yeah.
and one example is one close friend of mine. In fact, here's another little fact for you. Out of all the women in J6 that took their misdemeanor charges to trial, there were only 4 of us that did not take a plea deal and went to trial, and 2 were done with bench trials, which is different from a full jury trial, and the 2 that stuck together and fought this right to the end were myself and Kirsten Niemela, both from New Hampshire. That a cool fact?
23 is a
Um,
live free or die. That's
there you go.
so, so yeah, do you know Jerry DeLemus?
No, I do not, but, I
He
wanted
was
to
on the
mention.
Bundy Ranch, when the
Oh,
feds were trying to shoot that place up and steal
yeah,
land from him, and, he ended up getting arrested, and, he had a crappy defense lawyer, just assigned to him by the court, and they
mhm.
basically convinced him to sign a plea, and he ended up actually doing jail time. So, I mean, I know Jerry, and I'm familiar with the leverage they apply to you. Um but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues still out there that people don't talk about. For example, I heard you mention on a different podcast that a lot of people who had their federal pardons are still dealing with charges at the state level.
Yes, well, even though she wasn't a J6er, look at Tina Peters. She's got state charges, and Trump has pardoned her, but because she's got state charges, the state of Colorado refuses to adhere to that pardon. We had other people, Jeremy Brown was another example that went long periods in jail past the pardon because of the state charges. Now we've only got 2 J6ers that are still incarcerated, and we have, of course, the 13, which are the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys that haven't received a pardon. Most of them are military Purple Heart recipients that can't get their military benefits. And we just heard Trump on his speech saying that everybody's going to get the 1776 check if they were military. Well, these 13 men can't even get their health insurance through the VA. So, there's still work to be done in that area for sure.
Yeah, and some of these people have families and wives and children,
Yeah.
and their crime was just being there,
Look at
right?
Enrique Tarrio, he wasn't even there. He was charged
So,
wasn't even in DC that day and got 22 years in jail. How did that
I don't know.
happen?
It's a lot of work, and I somebody was talking about, Dan Bongino just resigned basically because
Yeah,
I think he probably discovered that the FBI is an intractable mess and that it's not worth his time to try and fix it from that particular location. Sometimes you have to get outside to do the best
I
work. And he really did great work from outside all these years. So maybe that's where he belongs. But you've been in the court system, in the justice system, you've experienced it firsthand. I don't know that there's a lot of hope. I keep telling people we need a good 10, 12 years of Republican presidents and legislatures that are willing to do the work. The question is, can you get them to do the work? And I, I,
absolutely,
I don't
and
know.
I don't see it yet, I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Congress is still heel dragging. We've heard some things. They like to tinker around the edges so that it looks like they're doing
Yeah.
something. but it
Yeah.
never really happens. But I don't know. What do you think? What would you like to see change? Because obviously you've been in there, and if we could do it, what would you suggest?
I would like to see every judicial on the DC bench gone. Really.
The word impeachment was floating through my head for judges while I was thinking about my question.
No, I mean, I just saw something the other day that we've got several of them on the bench that are naturalized citizens, like Tanya Chutkan, one of the worst. She was my judge, by the way, and she's from Jamaica. She's a naturalized citizen from Jamaica sitting on the bench, you know, judging Americans. And it's no incentive for them to uphold the Constitution, which they throw out the window from the get go because they don't have any allegiance to our country.
Yeah, now I
They
heard in
don't.
another podcast that your judge said there wouldn't be any First Amendment discussions about what
Oh,
happened.
yeah. That, so they have what they call pretrial, right? Which
Mm.
is a hearing that sets the rules of the road, which I didn't understand until I got there. But the first words out of his mouth, Judge Harvey, was, I don't want to hear anything about the First Amendment in my courtroom. Then the next thing he said was, if you wanted to use entrapment by estoppel, that's not gonna fly either, you can't do that. So they cut your arms off, they cut your legs off, and they say, "Defend yourself," you know? And there was no defense that we could raise, even though we did one of the funniest things that we did do when David Summerall testified on my trial was he got up there and the prosecution played this video. And their narrative around the video was that this was at the Western Tunnel. That when the crowd surged forward, there was a police line. And what they said was that the police line was attacked and the crowd moved forward, making them give up the police line. Well, they showed the video, and what the way evidence works is unless they open up the discussion about it, you can't bring it up as defense. You can't talk about it unless they've talked about it. So we're sitting there and we're watching her play this video, and my lawyer's saying to me, he's saying, "Oh boy, I hope she plays it to the end. Play it to the end." And she did. And so David gets up there, and my lawyer plays the same video, only our version of the video for him, which shows that the reason that line fell that day was because the Capitol Police were standing there with CS gas guns ready to shoot the gas into the people that were in the high staging that was put up for the inauguration. And one of the Capitol Police shot the CS gas into the cement, into the ground. They gassed themselves and they ran into the Capitol building. We showed it, we proved it. And even though we did, it didn't matter.
No, it was rigged. There was no doubt about it. And
You think?
certainly they didn't have any, it was all show trials. It really was. It was very Soviet era, Soviet-esque. And
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
like, well, Trump's doing these political prosecutions. And there's this huge list of people the Democrats took to trial, including without the J6ers, right? And
yeah,
you had all those other people. It's just an embarrassment. It really is.
yeah,
I believe in law and order and justice and the Constitution and all that stuff, and we're
yeah,
strong defenders of that. And we try to help out people however we can. And I want people to buy your book so they can read this story, and hopefully that sends them down a bunch of other rabbit holes to learn things they didn't know before. So
yes,
I'm very grateful that you took this awful, terrible experience and turned it into something that we can give people that they can learn from.
yes. Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank you very much for taking some time to talk to me today, and good luck with the book.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me today, and Merry Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Same.